at our school about that we'll be heading into our 4th year, but we are not unique. There are many youth civic engagement councils across the country, so we joined them in our inviting of youth to participate in their communities as well as just in their schools. It's youth voices working on problems that young people identify and then having young people act on those problems to see real change in effect. And so the way that we do this at our club, we've broken it into 3 committees. And since our club is a young club, we've changed those committees over the course of figuring out what works best for our students and what our students specifically want to focus on. So this year, our 3 committees were environment, mental health, and outreach. And each of those committees, students within the club will focus on a specific task, or not necessarily a problem, but something that they've identified that they want to see change in. And they focus on that one specific task for the year and make actionable items to reach goals within our community that can not only affect change with our peers, but with the community at large. We have bi-monthly meetings, and with the help of our sponsor, Mr. Ditto, we work to make some really cool things happen. So I'm going to focus on the first of these committees, the mental health committee, and then our incoming president next year, Sammy, will focus on the other 2 to give you kind of some updates as what we've been doing over the year. So the mental health committee, what we wanted to focus on was introducing mental health curriculum at a younger age so that younger students have this exposure to mental health curriculum and it's more normalized so that they feel that they have a more secure understanding of mental health resources or mental health information to kind of expedite the process of normalizing that conversation. And so the mental health committee, the chair of which were Precious and Mercy Alanian, they worked with Mrs. Engelhart to fine-tune a curriculum called Pathlight and are working and getting it into middle schools next year for 1 day a week, going into the classrooms and introducing this curriculum that will help get them some exposure to some mental health topics to help introduce that to them, give them that exposure, and allow them to see more effective strategies to deal with those sorts of things. So that was our mental health committee's task this year and how we're working on handling that. So I'll let Sammy take over.
Okay. So for outreach, we actually decided to change that to outreach this year from infrastructure. So that was what we did last year, but we found it a little bit difficult and we weren't seeing much progress. So we decided to do outreach and they've created a fun run. And so they've worked with Eric Hessel, who has helped them so much. And he's given them some ideas as well as helped them with ideas that they have. So the date is still in the process, but they're working on having lots of vendors, obviously having a run. And it's we're working towards getting that for a charity. So raising money for charity. So they've been working on that. Environment, I am a little biased because that's a group that I've been working with, but we've had a lot of progress. So last school year, we worked with Picard Park in creating a community garden. So that has seen so much action, and we had some Eagle Scouts that helped us build that. So they were able to get in some of their service hours as well as help us with what we needed. And then actually on Sunday, we had a composting day, which was a workshop. We just wanted to do a little fun thing where we created composting jars. And that was really just to get more recognition for Picard Park as well as the community garden, just because Picard Park is fairly new. And I feel like a lot of people don't necessarily know where it is. It does not feel like it's in Avon, but it definitely is. So we've definitely had a lot of progress with that. And that is it, but we just wanted to thank you guys for letting us talk to you. And it's really great for us to be able to have this connection with all of you guys, and it'll definitely help us so much in the future. But yeah, thank you.
Thank you guys so much.
Thank you.
Thank you to Jim Ditto as well. Jim's here in the back. Jim, do a quick wave. It may have been a couple of years since you guys have seen Jim, but Jim helps facilitate this program with the kids as well, and it's a great program. Did you want to say something, Jim? Come up to the mic, please, Jim, if you don't mind. Thank you.
I'd like to thank the council for being here, and for you too, Mr. Cannon, Ryan. The country is faced with a challenge right now as far as keeping our democracy going, and that's why I'm so passionate about working with young people. My wife and I have 10 grandkids, and they're good people, but I don't know if they're engaged enough. We want them to become engaged. And I salute these young people as well as the other members of the council. And thank Avon for making this possible. Before COVID, I put together 22 around the state. And those young people have now graduated from college, many of them have, and they're becoming leaders in their communities right now. Avon was one of the people that stepped forward after COVID. Thank you, Ryan, for doing that. I thank the council for being here. Because you could have your time, you can take your time to be here, to make a difference in your community, in the state, in the country. I'm not running for anything right now. I don't want to, but I thank you for running that, and thank you for all you're doing. Thank these young ladies.
Thank you, Jim. Next item on the agenda is the Economic Development Agreement, the Training Reimbursement Grant. Mr. Taylor.
John Taylor, Economic Development Director. What we have tonight is an agreement with the company for the training grant that you approved as an offer as an incentive. The company has reached out to me and they want a written agreement signed by the council for them to have. So we put this together and we're going to ask you tonight to sign this. This $50,000 training grant is reimbursable. What they will do is once a year, they will submit for the first part of the first week of the year. So at your first council meeting every year, we'll bring those in, we'll write a check, send it to the company. But it's a $50,000 training grant to train people that work for the company.
So do you monitor this program then?
Yeah. And it's reimbursable, so it's not like we're just handing them a check.
And I know we've set money aside in our budget for this.
Yep.
So any other questions for Mr. Taylor?
That was along, this is the money that we set aside specifically out of edit for
Yep.
training dollars. Roger. Thank you.
And this is a one-time grant?
Yes.
If no other questions, somebody like to make a motion?
I'll make a motion that we approve the training reimbursement grant for Winston as presented.
Thank you.
I'll second.
We have a motion and a second. Roll call, please.
Don Loudon. Robert Pope.
4.
Jason Puckett.
4.
Bill Holland.
4.
Greg Zuzen.
4.
Thank you.
Next item on the agenda is the taxpayer agreement, Riverwalk Partners LLC. Mr. Cannon.
Yeah, I'll kind of introduce this, and then if Dan wants to jump in and help if you guys have any legal questions. But as you guys are aware, we've done an agreement with Republic to develop Easton Gray. And so now as they are moving into starting to finance it, a typical part of the process of when we actually do a bond would be to do a taxpayer agreement. And now it may seem that a taxpayer agreement is us committing taxpayer dollars to them. That's not actually what this is at all. This is them, the people who are developing it, committing to generating a certain amount of taxes. If they don't, then they are going to have to make that payment. So that payment schedule on the last page is what, if they don't generate enough sufficient tax revenue, they actually have to pay that amount of money to the town. And that's to help us make sure that we can make our bond payments. So this is actually very beneficial to us. The reason you're seeing it a little bit earlier than normal is that because of the size of this project, and that's why the agreement is with Riverwalk Partners, is that Republic has partners on different sections of the project. And so this is the town center piece and the apartment complex. And that's based on the amount of, the dollar amounts in the agreement are based on what it's going to cost to do the infrastructure for that portion alone. You guys know that the bigger agreement actually is more money than that. And that's why this is kind of a smaller piece, and there's a colored exhibit in there that shows you specifically what this is. So what I would expect is you're going to see several of these taxpayer agreements based on the different partners Republic has in different areas in Easton Gray. There's no risk to the town. This actually provides us more security in that we know for certain that that $317,000 a year on your last page, the town will get starting in 2029, that we know that amount of tax revenue will be generated. And if it's not, they're going to pay us. So again, same as a developer purchase bond, this puts the onus on them to actually do the development, get it built so it's generating the assessed value to generate that, so they don't have to make those payments to us. So I think that's the best summary. This does have to go to all the different organizations. So it's been to the Economic Development Commission. They have approved it. It went to the Redevelopment Commission on Monday, and they have approved it as well. And so it's here before you guys tonight, and hopefully you guys will approve it as well. I'm happy to answer any questions.
Any questions for Mr. Cannon?
Ryan, if they don't generate that money, you say they pay the difference? Is that right?
That's
Okay.
correct. Yep.
Making sure I'm understanding.
I just have a comment.
Go ahead.
I think this is one of the better thought out programs. So I'm not sure when this was started or where it was since I'm new on the council, but I just think this is very innovative thinking. So I think the town residents should be very proud of where this came from and who's ramrodding it.
Well, and I talked to Ryan earlier today about this, and J.C. Hart is going to be the developer for these apartments, and he's probably the top-end developer. My only concern was, do we have everything in writing? Is it written down? Is it recorded? Because as time goes by, the public's here, then they go on to somebody else. And he said, yes, it is, and it's going to go to the Plan Commission, and we don't want just above average. We want this is something that they're going to be talking about in Avon long after we're gone. So, thank you. Any other comments would somebody like to make a motion?
I'll make a motion that we adopt the taxpayer agreement with Riverwalk Partners LLC as presented.
We have a motion. Do we have a second?
I'll second.
We have a motion and a second. Roll call, please.
Greg Zuzen,
4.
Robert Pope,
4.
Don Loudon,
4.
Bill Holland,
4.
Jason Puckett.
4.
Next item is awarding the 2024 HMA paving project. Keaton?
Good evening, everyone. So I am here to recommend that we accept the lowest responsive bid for that 2024 CCMG project. The lowest bidder came in as DC Construction Services, who is the contractor who did it for us last year. They were also the lowest bid last year and in 2020, and they've done a great job. And it came in just a little bit shy of what our overall matching grant was, combined with the money that we have to put toward it with NDOT. They're matching 50%. So I wanted to recommend that we do approve the maximum amount, the $2,310,906, rather than just the exact number that the bid came back at, because they hit just under 97% of that maximum money. And so I just wanted to put that forward.
So the dollar amount of $2,310,906.08, which is the engineer's estimate, is that what the community crossing grant money is with our contribution to it?
Exactly. Yeah. So that's the maximum amount, not to exceed that, in case there are things that we can.
So you guys, all you're actually doing tonight is awarding the bid. So you can't actually do an amount different than what the bid is. You're awarding to the low bidder. I wouldn't put a dollar amount to it at all. You're awarding the low bid to DC Construction, and just leave it at that. You don't need to put a dollar amount in.
And that's what I was asking, because I didn't think we could do that either. So
Yeah,
thank
you're-
you for that.
You're awarding to the lowest bidder.
Okay.
Any other questions for Keaton, Mr. Holland?
Do we know how many miles we're talking about that's being paved for that amount?
I can get back to you on that. I don't have that number on hand, but that is in our plan set, and I can get that
Thank
to
you.
you. Yep, no problem.
You said we worked with them last year. Are we satisfied with the relationship with their work?
Yeah, I believe so.
Any other questions for Keaton? Somebody prepared to make a motion?
I'll make a motion that we accept the 2024-1 paving project contract to the lowest bidder, to be awarded to the lowest bidder as presented.
We have a motion. Do we have a second?
I'll second the motion.
We have a motion and a second. Roll call, please.
Don Loudon,
4.
Bill Holland,
4.
Jason Puckett,
4.
Greg Zuzen,
4.
Robert Pope,
4.
Next item on the agenda, tax abatements, 2024 compliance forms. Mr. Taylor.
Good evening again. We have 5 forms for you tonight. 2 for Chicago Industrial, 1 for Avon Landing, 1 for Rise Development, 1 for Harlan Bakeries. Harlan is a personal property, the rest are real property. First one from Chicago Industrial is on their 1,008,891,000 square foot spec building. They estimated it to be $71,200,000. This year it shows $57,049,063, but that's incomplete because the assessment was done on first week of January and the building wasn't finished. Yeah, 57 million. I would say that at 57 million based on 71 million, they're in substantial compliance. I would ask that you approve that. I don't know if you want to do all 5 and approve them one time or not.
Let's just go through each one separately.
Okay,
This is the
big
first
building.
year of this one.
Yes.
Okay. Any questions for Mr. Taylor? As I told Ryan, when they do the form, it's not Avon City Council, but Town Council. Someday we'll be a city, right, Ryan?
Right.
If there are no other questions for Mr. Taylor, would somebody like to make a motion to accept the ALC tax abatement?
So can I just ask for clarification? So for Chicago Industrials, they have 2 sites. Are you doing it for both or are you doing it for 1?
Well, I haven't gone over
Okay,
the
so you're
second one.
only doing one at a time?
Yeah.
Okay, just want to make sure when you guys make your motion, you may say what address you're referring to.
Or the size of the building? I think the one we're talking about is
$1,008,891. Yes.
Somebody like to make a motion?
I'll make a motion that we approve the tax abatement documents for the property at 8598 East County Road 1 South as presented.
We have a motion. Do we have a second?
I'll second.
We have a second. Roll call, please.
Robert Pope,
4.
Jason Puckett,
4.
Bill Holland,
4.
Greg Zuzen,
4.
Don Loudon,
4.
Okay, Building 2, which was the first building they built, but they called Building 2, was 880,000 square feet. They estimated the development to be $43,177,951, and it appraised at $50,550,200. So they are also in substantial compliance.
And is this also the first year or is it the second year on this one?
This would be the second year.
Okay. I know there's a couple of them in here where we showed the tax abatement years. If we could add that next time, it kind of helps us as we're looking at these, if it's the first
Sure.
year of 10 or the 4th year of 10. Any comments then on this abatement?
I'll make a motion that we accept the Avon Logistics Center tax abatement at the address of 8838 East County Road 100 South as presented.
We have a motion. Do we have a second?
I'll second.
We have a motion and a second. Roll call, please.
Greg Zuzen,
4.
Robert Pope,
4.
Jason Puckett,
4.
Don Loudon,
4.
Bill Holland.
4.
The third one is for Avon Landing, the 320,000 square foot building. It was estimated to be 21,800,000. Actually, it came in at 18,691,000, but I've not seen what the county has assessed it at. I believe that when this thing's fully occupied, which it's going to be before probably the end of summer, that this will be a big improvement for our community, and I say they're in substantial compliance.
And I'm going to assume that this is the first year of this one.
Yes.
Any other comments, questions for Mr. Taylor?
Was that also incomplete at the start of the year?
I think it was complete. All the roads weren't in, but the building itself was complete.
Did you say this building has a tenant in it now or not?
They'll have 2 by the end of summer.
Okay.
It'll be full. I was hoping to use that building to store some equipment for another building that's going to be built, but that won't be available to us.
Any other questions for Mr. Taylor? Would somebody like to make a motion?
I'll make a motion that we approve the Avon Landing Commerce Park tax abatement as presented for the address of 2516 Logistics Way, as presented.
We have a motion. Do we have a second?
I'll second.
Roll call, please.
Bill Holland,
4.
Jason Puckett,
4.
Robert Pope,
4.
Don Loudon, Greg Zuzen.
4.
The next one is personal property for Harlem Bakeries. This is a piece of equipment that they believed was going to be $10 million, and that's what they asked the abatement on. The property, when they bought it, the equipment was $8,700,000. But I would remind you that even though there are 239 employees short of what they said on their real property tax abatement, they were $14 million higher on their wages. So although the equipment was less expensive than they thought it was, they've certainly done what they need to do to try to keep their employees by raising wages to living wages. And I would ask that you approve this. Yes, yes.
And this is year 10, so this is the last year.
Yeah.
And I know they've come in here in prior years and talked about the difficulty of hiring people and doing the best they could. And so really the trade-off is the higher personal property that they've brought in. So
Well, Mr. Harlan said we will pay people more to keep them, and he has.
somebody like to make a motion regarding the Harlan Bakery's tax abatement?
I'll make a motion that we approve the Harlan Bakery tax abatement.
We have a motion. Do we have a second?
I'll second.
Roll call, please.
Don Loudon, Robert Pope,
4.
Greg Zuzen,
4.
Bill Holland,
4.
Jason Puckett,
4.
The last one is Rise Development. Rise came to us and said they anticipated investing 17.6 million, and they invested 22.2 million. They had said there'd be 667 employees on this property, and that's not what they meant. What they meant to be 667 people employed by the companies that would be on the property. I had a conversation with the one of the people at Rise the other day, and I said, you need to be able to call every one of the people that you put into your buildings and get an employee count. Because at some point, the council is going to say, you're telling me there's only 300 employees there, and you said there were going to be 667, and that they can then rescind the tax abatement. So they, right now, there are 99 people that are working on property, but not everything is leased either. And this is also the first year for this. So I would say to you, because of the investment, that they are in substantial compliance, and ask that you would accept this.
And I appreciate you bringing that to their attention, because that will come about the next time and they could be in jeopardy of getting their abatement.
Well, but the problem is, you know, they'll have 5 or 6 companies in there, and that may only have one person on the premise, and people come and pick things up and report to them, and they may have 60 employees. Well, we get the benefit of those 60 employees because those wages are paid out of Avon. So that's why I told them next year we need to have you have a list of all the people in your buildings, and and have individual what their employee base is.
Any other questions for Mr. Taylor? Somebody like to make a motion? Mr. Holland?
So what's their estimation of when they might be fully employed, as they indicated to us they
Well,
would be
he said that the buildings will all be full before the end of the year.
the end of this year?
Yeah.
Okay.
But if someone comes to him and leases a space and they only have 3 employees, he can't say, I'm not going to lease this to you. I need 45 employees.
I understand that.
So-
I'm just saying, we need to keep these things in mind
Yeah.
when people come to us for these kind of abatements.
Yep.
Any other questions? Somebody like to make a motion?
I'll make a motion that we we approve the RISE tax abatement as presented.
We have a motion. Do we have a second?
I'll second.
We have a second. Roll call, please.
Jason Puckett,
4.
Robert Pope,
4.
Bill Holland,
4.
Don Loudon,
4 because of the assessment.
Greg Zuzen,
4.
Thank you.
Next item on the agenda is the final reading of ordinance 2024-15, Town Code Revision, Chapter 1, Article 1. Mr. Dan Taylor.
Yes, this ordinance makes changes to the provisions for the general penalties for violations of ordinances. Again, the law has been updated to allow a little higher fine for a second or subsequent violation. So the only change this ordinance makes is it says that, again, your fines may not exceed $2,500 for a violation unless it's second or subsequent, and then it can go up to $7,500. Now, the town council establishes all fines in your fine table, but this just sets the outside parameters, the brackets, if you will. And this is just very simply a legal change. This is second reading.
Any questions for Mr. Taylor? Somebody like to make a motion?
I'll make a motion that we accept the final reading on ordinance 2024-15, revising the town code as presented.
We have a motion. Do we have a second?
I'll second.
Roll call, please.
Greg Zuzen,
4.
Bill Holland,
4.
Jason Puckett,
4.
Robert Pope, Don Loudon.
4.
Next item on the agenda is the final reading of ordinance 2024-16, Town Code Revision, Chapter 2, Article 2-1. Mr. Taylor.
Yes, this ordinance addresses the position of the clerk treasurer. It brings your ordinance up to date with several minor changes, I think. The substantial changes in this section all have to do with fiscal officers in towns who are not able to meet their obligations with the State Board of Accounts, something we should not have to worry about. However, you will note that there's a lot in there about, hey, what happens if your clerk treasurer leaves, can't do the work, they're incompetent, they just won't do the work, what do you do? And so what you'll see is there was a law passed just last year which substantially updated provisions and gives the town council the authority to hire a CPA or to appoint a person to fulfill those duties. This, of course, is in reaction to 2 actual cases where this happened in the state of Indiana, not here. But again, so this ordinance brings your section on the clerk treasurer's position fully up to date. I'll be happy to answer any questions.
Any questions for Mr. Taylor?
I'll make a motion that we adopt ordinance 2024-16, Town Code Revision, Chapter 2, Article 2-1 as presented.
We have a motion. Do we have a second?
Second.
We have a second. Roll call, please.
Robert Pope,
4.
Jason Puckett,
4.
Don Loudon,
4.
Bill Holland,
4.
Greg Zuzen,
4.
Thank you. On that note, I'll take tomorrow off. So-
We haven't signed it yet. Final reading of ordinance 2024-17, Town Code Revision, Chapter 2, Article 2-2. Mr. Taylor.
Yes, this section applies to the position of the town manager. And again, statutory changes have been made. I'm just going to cover a couple of the basic ones. And so first, what you'll know that there was a provision added after the adoption of your code, which said that the town council, you cannot appoint one of your own to be the town manager. I don't know how that would work anyway, but somebody tried that. If you look at duties of the town manager, we've just cleaned those up a little bit. And again, to comply with the law and fix some wording problems, but nothing really substantial there. In section 210, compensation and tenure, again, there's a specific statutory provision, so we've just quoted it. And it really says that you determine how much the town manager gets paid and the term of that employment. The town manager serves at your pleasure, as long as the tenure of the town manager is the same as the longest remaining tenure of you, the town council. So you'll want to keep that in mind. If you go beyond that and say we're to give Mr. Cannon a 7-year term, then he doesn't serve at your pleasure. He can only be dismissed for cause. Now, you all have a contract and you deal with this issue a different way, but that's what the statute says. If you go to the next page, acting town manager, in some places, it was thought the town manager could appoint someone to act in his behalf or her behalf if they were going to be absent. But the statute is very clear. Only the town council can do that. So that's what this says. Only the town council could do that. So if Mr. Cannon were to be on leave, you all would be the ones to make that decision. 213 is a new prohibition, which says that when we start issuing bonds and warrants, which are checks, that you all cannot delegate that task to the town manager. That's really your job. And so only you can do those things. The town manager cannot issue, execute bonds, notes, or warrants on behalf of the town. So the town manager cannot sign checks. And that's what that's about. The prohibition against serving on a police disciplinary body has been the law for a long time. It just wasn't in your code. So we put that in there. So this would bring this section fully up to date as well.
Any questions for Mr. Taylor?
I'll make a motion that we approve the final reading of ordinance 2024-17, Town Code Revision, Chapter 2, Article 2-2, as presented.
Second.
We have a motion and we have a second. Roll call, please.
Greg Zuzen,
4.
Don Loudon,
4.
Jason Puckett,
4.
Bill Holland,
4.
Robert Pope.
4.
Next item is final reading of ordinance 2024-18, Town Code Revision, Chapter 2, Article 3. Mr. Taylor.
Yes, this has to do with your ordinance violation bureau, and in every town or city, there is such a thing, in that this really deals with how do we find someone that has violated our ordinances, and then what rights do they have, and how do they pay their fine, and within what time. So you, the town council, don't hear much about these matters. This is the world of Julie Loker. And every little fine or violation that we have, high grass in the yard, for example, we have to have certain things in our policy. Since you adopted your ordinance a long time ago, there have been a lot of changes that mainly have to do with providing notices and providing due process to someone who would want to contest those matters. And so what you see here is an amplification of your current code in order to expand it and provide for these rights and notices and procedures. We have simply tried to comply with the law and try to make it more clear to someone who has been fined what their rights are. And so that's what this really involves, is really due process sort of issues. You will note on page 3, subparagraph L, that for years you, like many towns, had a deferral program for their ordinance violations, but the Supreme Court came along about 5 years ago and said, There's no statutory authority for that. You, cities and towns can't do that. That deferral program is really borrowed from county prosecutors have those for criminal matters. But you, like a lot of other towns a long time ago, just kind of borrowed that. And the Supreme Court says you can't do that. So we've taken that out. And otherwise, we just tried to make it compliant with those new laws. Be happy to answer any questions. This is also second reading.
The only question I have is the dollar amount of the civil penalty. Is there a limit there? Is that the maximum that we can charge? It doesn't seem like it's a lot of money.
Well, yeah, there are constraints on that, but now for each, you in the ordinance, in various ordinances, set the fines in those ordinances. So we bring ordinances to you from time to time and you say, if you're a direct seller, you're in violation, for example. This is what your fine is. You, the town council, set those fines. Fees are governed by statute. So fees we can't do much about, but the actual fine, for example, the one you see there, improper conduct by canvasser, this would change it from $50 to $100 because we've had a lot of these and we're trying to deter that. But the fees are what is limited.
That was my next question. Have we had any issues with these different provisions, these improper conduct by canvasser and unpermitted lawful possessions?
We have.
We've had a lot in the last couple of years, issues with direct sellers going around the town without permits, being rude to homeowners, caught on Ring doorbell cameras. I've been working with Mitchell, now Ann, and we send the company a $1,000 fine on the first offense. And as well as we have had officers, you can call the non-emergency dispatch line and they'll send someone. But just most recently, we had about 2 weeks ago, a certain alarm company that had gone to a resident's home and threatened to turn off their service because they wouldn't answer their door. And it was all caught because she was talking to the person through the Ring doorbell camera and they were a current client. That man didn't know. And when she said, I already have your service, he said, well, then I'll just shut off your service. And he walked away. So that company was fined $1,000 and that person had non-emergency dispatch called on them.
So these dollar amounts here are different than the $1,000 that you just talked about.
Right. There are many in all of your ordinances, in your individual ordinances, not in this ordinance. This is just generally how the Bureau works. You have a whole table, pages and pages of fines for various things. So this is merely just a couple that we're dealing with right now. I would say you probably have 75 different fines for various different things. We're having trouble with now. The direct sellers, these are people who are supposed to be registered with the town. So if we have the police called, we have identification of them. They're mainly out of state, seasonal workers for that. Right now in the spring, it's lawn care companies that have no connection with Avon. They sweep in, they put these workers up in hotels and then they solicit. That's fine as long as they register, but they don't register. They know I've spoken to their attorney. They do it blatantly. The other big area we have on Ordinance Violation Bureau is overnight parking of semi-tractor trailers, which the police have helped us with, but we have several outstanding fines for that. But we have probably, like I said, it's your role in the town council. You don't hear much about those, but this is really the structure of the process. All the fines are contained in other sections of your code.
So I'm reading here, the new paragraph L, it says that quarterly that the town council would receive a report from the clerk treasurer that tells us about those fines and the activity that we've had for that prior quarter. Okay.
Right, yeah, and there was those reports. I know I've seen them many times. I'm not sure without some context that they mean much. So what we suggested was to make it a quarterly report, which would allow you to compare one quarter versus a prior quarter versus a prior and maybe have better data and then be able to do it that way. I'm not sure month to month it makes a lot of sense, but we thought that we'd do that. But yeah, there are a couple of reporting and then there's also the idea of how many violations would be important to watch and then also what are the collections. But if you see multiple violations for the same ordinance, then that's when I think I would recommend the town council look at that and say, you know, we might need to increase that fine. Apparently, that fine is not high enough, and the fines can go up to $2,500, but a lot of our fines are 50, 100. Now, again, if that's enough to make someone not, you know, violate those ordinances, then fine. But if we see multiple violations, then we should probably take a look at that. And we would typically give you a heads up and make a suggestion about that, as we've done in the past.
Any other questions for Mr. Taylor? Somebody like to make a motion?
I make a motion that we adopt ordinance 2024-18 Town Code Revision, Chapter 2, Article 3 as presented.
We have a motion. Do we have a second? Second. We have a motion and a second. Roll call, please.
Jason Puckett. Don Loudon.
4.
Greg Zuzen.
4.
Robert Pope.
4.
Bill Holland.
4.
Next item is the final reading of ordinance 2024-19, Town Code Revision, Chapter 2, Article 4 and 5. Mr. Taylor.
Yes, this ordinance is a cleanup ordinance regarding the appointment, primarily regarding the appointment of alternate members to your Plan Commission and your Board of Zoning Appeals. And again, because of changes of the law, they've made this a little easier. Now your alternates don't have to have a term. I mean, the idea when this first was raised years ago was that you would appoint an alternate for each member. That got to really difficult to recruit people to serve in that manner. So later, the rules were relaxed to allow you to have an alternate member who could kind of pinch hit if you needed to establish a quorum. They could then step in as the alternate for any member of the BZA or any member of the Plan Commission, making it much easier to have a meaningful participation by that alternate and not having to appoint 3 or 5 alternates depending on the board or commission. So this only relates to the BZA and the Plan Commission, but we've tried to clean this up so that it makes it much easier. And although we do recommend that you have 1 alternate to the BZA and 1 to the Plan Commission available in case you need a quorum, we don't think it's necessary to have an alternate for each person on each body. And so this really simplifies it. Will make it a lot easier, and your appointments, you won't have to try, because the truth is that I can remember an alter being used one time in my 23 years. It would be rare that you would have a need for that person. The other thing it makes clear is that the alternate can also step in even just for one case if there's a member of the BZA or the Plan Commission who must recuse himself because of a conflict of interest or the failure to be impartial, so that person could even move in for just one case and then step back and not participate in the rest of the meeting. So we've made that's a nuance, but that's allowed now. And so we've added that as well. Be happy to answer any questions.
Any questions for Mr. Taylor? Would somebody like to make a motion?
I'll make a motion that we adopt ordinance 2024-19 Town Code Revision, Chapter 2, Articles 4 and 5 as presented.
Second.
We have a motion and a second. Roll call, please.
Bill Holland.
4.
Jason Puckett.
4.
Don Loudon.
4.
Robert Pope.
4.
Greg Zuzen.
4. Next item on the agenda is legal counsel. Mr. Taylor.
I have 2 things for you tonight. The first is that, as you know, we've been working with Ryan Cannon on updating the code. So you're going to see more of these ordinances, these cleanup ordinances, but you can also probably see already how kind of important it is we're doing this because we need to be compliant. But you'll see more of these, and we feel better about getting your code in kind of better standing. Secondly, in the litigation with West Central, I would just advise you that we have filed a motion for summary judgment, and there'll be a hearing on that in August. And so we'll keep you advised, but we probably won't have any news until sometime after that hearing, probably August or September. And we'll keep you advised of that, of any decision that the court makes on that. As you will recall, a motion for summary judgment is our motion saying that it's not necessary to have a trial, Your Honor. Just take the facts that are not in dispute and apply the law, and we think we win. That's what a motion for summary judgment is. So this is a pre-trial motion, but if the judge were to grant it, it disposes of the entire case. We filed the same kind of motion in the Duke Energy case, and the judge said that we are right. So we hope it turns out that way.
Thank you. Next item on the agenda is the second of 2 public comment opportunities. Public may comment on items on the agenda that are not a public hearing or on a specific matter within the council's jurisdiction. Please come forward, state your name, address, and limit your comments to 3 minutes. With nobody coming forward, we'll close that portion of the agenda and move to council comment. Council, any statements? Any happy Memorial Weekend? Go Pacers, go Racers, and all that stuff?
Avon High School girls softball team is in the regionals next Tuesday at home, 6 p.m. Go check it out.
There you go. Next item is council calendar. Mr. Cannon.
Since you brought up happy, I did want to acknowledge Mike Tully had his 28th anniversary this week on Monday. So Mike, as you guys know, is the first employee hired by the town, and he's still here and kicking. So thank you, Mike, for all your service. You're fantastic. He's probably at home watching this right now. So council calendar, couple brief things. Your next meeting is June 13th. As a reminder, I will not be at that meeting. I had talked to you guys about potentially canceling the work session. I know that Shelby has reached out to you guys about some discussions on some park property. So we'll see maybe how that progresses over the next couple of weeks. But I may suggest, if that is making progress, that you guys maybe meet with Shelby in work session to talk about that if it necessary. But I do want to make sure you have on your calendar the June 27th meeting. We will have a work session before the June 27th meeting, and that's Greg Garatos is going to be in attendance. So we're going to talk about the capital improvement plan as well as financing the civic center, the park bond, and potentially some additional other bonding options. So you'll definitely have that one before the second meeting in June.
So you'll kind of let us know about the work session then on the 13th, if that's going to happen or not?
Yep. Yeah, we'll see how Shelby progresses with some of her discussions, and we'll probably be having some individual discussions with you guys. And
I was going to say, if Shelby wants to reach out and contact each one of us individually, that's fine too. Shelby, Justin, you.
Right. Yep.
All right.
Thank you.
Nothing else. Meeting adjourned. Thank you.